Hey, good evening. Coming all the way from live from Tokyo. I'm doing this interview with my brother here, Pastor David Knight. He's a fellow cohort member on the master's course with Lancaster Bible College, and I got to know David some years ago. Now about what, 16 years?
It's close to 2 dozen. Yeah, long
Yeah,
time.
too long. Anyway, it's been amazing just to see David being a businessman and his wife Uvela. They have two wonderful kids. Um, they were here working with the DoD in the Department of Education, but David was working as one of the civilian with the military. Anyway, uh, just to see David rise up from where he's at now. He's pastoring a church out in the most southern part of the country of Japan here, a place called Okinawa. Um, had the privilege of just working together with him. He was part of our New Hope Tokyo when they first came about 3 years after we started. And they started Coffee Ministry, and that is one of the long-lasting ministry. They're still going today.
We started the book ministry and we started the video ministry so that it could, was it VCDs or something at the
Yeah,
time?
in those days. So they faithfully serving the Lord with us, and then because of their duty with the government, they had to move down to Okinawa. But that's also the place where they felt God's leading. Now, about they were there, always connecting with us. He's always calling me. We would talk things over. He's just reporting how they're doing as a family, as first, and as someone who's always wanted to see what God is leading them to do.
We helped with New Hope Okinawa,
Right.
and then when the pastor's wife died from cancer and we were just starting, we went on base and I became kind of like a military chaplain under the umbrella of New Hope. And we worked with the young SEAL junior enlisted military.
I think your job at that time too, it was kind of like work, but ministry, yeah.
We were the answer for the military for those people that were Americans, but they were like 19 to 22-year-olds coming over there for the first time overseas.
Were they some of these people were from the war zone? They return and they regroup here, and then either they go home or they go back to the field, isn't that?
It was both. I mean, we had people that would come over first time overseas. Maybe they were 19 and they didn't have a father, they didn't have a mother, so we would talk to them. Then some of them would go to the desert and they were afraid about going there, and then they would come back and they would have stories to tell, but they didn't know how to process it. We dealt with a lot of people that would lose first loved ones, so they would maybe lose a grandmother or a grandfather, but it was the first death in their family, and so we would help them cope with that. We did baptisms, and we did like 13 baptisms, 6 weddings, and stuff like that. So
Yeah, well, David during that time too, I think, has learned the heart of a shepherd. And he continues, when he was with us before he moved down with his wife Uvela, they were both just serving the Lord, and do whatever that needs to be done. That's why they started the coffee ministry. They still go into this day. They started those. In those days, they were DVDs before MP4s. So, they were just learning how to serve the Lord and just loving the people that God puts in front of them. So, while he was doing this outreach called Mr. Bean, it's a cafe-like outreach where he reaches out to a lot of this, as he talks about, military youngsters who are just first time out of the States and just needed a home. And then after that, he works inside the military, the chaplaincy, in a way of doing children's ministries. And it was from there that I sensed too in my heart that he really has a heart, both of them, to really pastor, because they are already pastoring those youngsters from the military, and then also the little kids at on the base.
It was very unusual
Was
for
it?
the Air Force to contract with an outside pastor.
Mm.
So I'm the only case that I've ever known. And so they did contract with me to be a chaplain or a pastor there. And we did that and children's ministry along with the military ministry for about five years.
So from there, some things that they felt, you felt obviously a sense that God was leading you out of that situation with in serving on the base into something a lot more to the locals, to Okinawans, and I think they sensed a calling of the Lord pulling them toward the locals there. And about 2.5 years ago, I had a talk with David, and he was while he was talking to me, he was about to go on his summer trip to drive all the way from the East Coast.
We were going to drive across America.
Woo! Anyway, it was really a wonderful experience that moment when he called me while he was here in Japan before he took that break. And I remember I just felt this sense of, as I was listening to him and as he was talking to me about his heart about the people of Okinawa, and they both were sensing some sort of stirring in their hearts. And I remember said, well, our first attempt to plant a church in Okinawa went well, in a sense. The young man really fulfilled his calling. He moved his whole family there. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. Only about a year later, found out the wife had cancer and she passed on. And we didn't have an extension to continue in that format. But
We were a part of that, so we knew the history.
right. So for him just to continue on his own personal calling into pastoring and starting a church in Okinawa. So the church is existing now with at least about, from time 15, 20 people. And Japan is a very difficult place to be. As most of you who are missiologists probably know that Japan, I put this because I don't really follow that stats. That's 0.1% Christians, and in that including Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and all the other Christian cults. So really, then it really narrowed it down to a much more smaller percentage. But my calculations a little bit, because I've been here for 35 years and I've seen God does amazing things. Now, that's not included in all these stats as often being quoted by many missionaries and mission works. Whatever the number, doesn't matter. God knows who are his. But what I want to talk to David about today, now that last October, the year 2017, we finally realized, David and Willa realized their dream and their vision to reach the Okinawan people. So we started New Hope UQ.
And we've been in Japan for 27 years. So
Too long.
It was not something where this was a brand new culture for us. We've been here.
So I'm going to ask my brother David. It's been a wonderful serving the Lord together here in Japan, and his lovely wife, who's sitting over there. But we're just going to have a talk here. The question that I want to pose to you, David. You've been reading the Bible, have your studies, as well as having your devotional, and you've been teaching that to your flock. Who is your biblical hero, and why are they important in your life and ministry?
Oh, you're my hero.
Oh, they
Oh,
forgot.
no, you said biblical.
But they
Okay, who?
forgot to put my name in the Bible. You see.
No, actually, I have several. And for different reasons, I go to different people for mentoring. Joseph, because he was faithful, even though his brothers, hated him and threw him into jail, the owners and stuff like that. But he was
Right.
faithful to God, and God rewarded that. David, because obviously my name is David, and so I always kept track of what he was doing. And then Job, he just knew what he was supposed to do and he would do it.
Mm.
And so there's different ones that, kind of mentor me for different reasons. David, because he messed up, but yet the heart was right. And so even though he made some blunders and mistakes, for me, it was like, no, let's get back up, let's do things. And, when there was the baby that was going to die, and David went in and he was praying for this baby to not lose its life.
Right, his baby.
Right. Because of his sin. And he did everything he could do. He prayed to God, but then the baby did die, and he's like, okay, let's get up, let's go eat something. And so there's different mentors that I have.
It's quite interesting in that story too, how his leaders were trying to urge him to eat, and he wouldn't eat, and I mean, just a total turnaround.
He knew each of those mentors knew what they were supposed to do,
Right.
and they did it.
Wow.
And they didn't care about what other people thought. And I think that as a pastor, you need to do that. You want to know what your flock is doing. The shepherd knows what the sheep are doing, but when you know what you're doing is right for God, then you have to have that ability to go forward and do it.
So you look at your ministry now, you've been in ministry per se, but becoming a pastor of your own flock since last year, as you were, in New Hope. You have other experience, but in New Hope, looking at the life of David and Joseph and Job, as you mentioned, what is one thing that you learned from all these characters that helped you in your ministry, since you now pastor your own flock within New Hope?
Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect, and you just need to stay close to God, and you need to go forward. And you can teach what you know, but you reproduce who you are.
Wow. That is so true, huh?
Yeah, I've heard that before.
I wonder who said that.
Yeah.
I think it's that doctor, the Boriki one.
The Porticu.
Yeah, I think so.
The guy on the ranch.
Yeah, I know him. You know him too.
Yeah, I do.
Anyway, he's a wonderful, that guy who had that quote there that we quoted.
But it's true, though.
It is true.
You teach what you know, but you reproduce who you are. And my children have done that. My own personal children, they'll pick up the habits that I have. Walking through the grocery parking lot, and I would push a cart back to the front door because that was just the right thing to do. And then they started doing it. So, yeah, we can teach what we know, but we reproduce who we are. And so if your flock sees you doing something, then they're going to do it.
Right. Yeah. Now, on a follow-up question on that, knowing that in every biblical character or leaders, they have certain shortcomings that the Bible said these are things that easily besets us. And you look at the life of all these guys that you mentioned, and as a minister, there's those difficult moments, the struggle that of time, caring for the sheep, loving on the people that sometimes are a little bit on a difficult side, and then also within your own marriage relationship. Pastor Wayne often in his teaching said that you got to find out what fills your tank and what empties your tank. Now, when it comes to ministry, there's a lot of things that can empty your tank, and
there are, but he has another rule. He has another rule, and that is you need to take care of your 5%.
Right.
And that is where you can do a lot of things, but there's only some things that only Pastor David can do, or only David Knight can do.
Now, would you mind saying one of those within that 5%? How do you care for your own soul? Your activities on the day to fill that in, or the week?
Well, journaling is a big part of that, the life journal. And that's something I've always latched onto because it's something that I could share. And with the military, you have people coming and going, and what are you going to tell them in 10 minutes that can affect the rest of their lives?
Right.
You know, you can tell them the story of Jesus, but if you share with them how to do life journal and then it's online or get this or do that, then that's something that they can feed themselves for a long time. And I've taught Catholics, I've taught Jewish people, I've taught others that don't go to church how to journal, and so that's been a big part of a feeding program for
Right.
doing that. What can I do that's 5%? Then that would be that I'm a dad to a son and a daughter that are now in college. I'm also a husband, and she is only going to have that husband. You know, she's my wife, my helpmate. So that's something. And then when you talk about guardrails and stuff like that, one of the things that I do is when I do my journaling, and I had this choice when I went public with doing it and posting it on Facebook, I said, I'm not going to change who I am. And so at the end of it, you'll see where it says, and thank you, God, for my helpmate, Uvelo. Or I'll just say, thank you for Uvelo, the gift you gave to me so many years ago. And so that's something that I put in there. It's just, I'm not going to change who I am, whether it be on Facebook or behind the pulpit. So, yeah, that would be something. Doing the 5%. Only I can be her husband, and I need to make sure that I'm doing that. And you say, what would I do? What are my misgivings and things like that? I think it's important for us as church leaders to go back and evaluate that all the time. Your situations change, but for me, the one that I'm working on now is 6 months ago when we started this process of planting the church. I knew that senior pastor, you know, I've got a small flock, but I'm the pastor, a senior pastor, and I wanted to make sure that my health was taken care of. So I met with Uvela and said, can we do some healthy eating for 6 months? And she had this Pray Fit, and we did that for 6 months, and I've lost 30 pounds. Now I want to step it up, and so for the next season, I'll be then making sure that I'm going to the gym and to I've worked it out so I can listen to my books for my college class while I'm doing the treadmill. And
Because that's your learning style.
that's
Your
my
more
learning style.
audio.
I was a disc jockey, news reporter, so that's my learning style. And I've, you know, latched onto that, and so that's helped me with my master's program doing that. And I still have those, you know, there are people that won't hire somebody if they're going to be a pastor if they don't have problems, because truthfully, we all have mistakes, we all have problems, and so health is one of those areas where I'm trying to change.
Right.
And it's not easy, but it's one of the sins that is probably the most visible, being overweight. And so by dropping the weight, now I feel better, and the next step will be doing the calisthenics, that kind of cardio.
So your 5% include on a daily basis your devotion. So that's how you get your, you know, your thoughts and your heart on the same page and connect you to the Lord. And then you also share that with others, right?
I do. Yeah, I do. I post it, and then it's translated into Japanese for our Japanese flock. Our flock is, it's a quarter Chinese,
Right.
2 quarters Japanese, and 1 quarter, I would say, American.
Well, you
So-
really have an international.
Yeah, when I speak,
team
it's
there.
changed into
So what do you speak?
Japanese. I speak in English,
Okay.
and I know the culture. So I use sometimes NIRV, which is a reader's version of NIV, which puts the text at 3rd grade reading, so reading level for like an 8 or 9-year-old. Now I use an NASB and some other things, but when I want to say, how can I simply say this fact, or how can I simply say this scripture, then I go back to maybe an NIRV edition of it.
So your activities of taking care of your own soul. First, you have those devotional moments. What about a time of, let's say, for me and my wife, you know, 4 years into the ministry, we certainly felt the strain of the challenge of planting a church, and I was just so gung ho about make sure that the church stand, and almost at the expenses of losing our my wife was not coming along. It was there that I seek out the help of my mentor, Uncle Dan Shima, and then also seek some wisdom from Pastor Wayne Cordero. And they suggested to take a month break just to be a father, as you rightly mentioned, your 5%, that I needed to be a father to my daughter and a husband to my wife, and I needed to be still. I was so driven, and sometimes that's it's a good thing to start something, but it's quite a challenge to maintain balance. Do you take let's say we take now, since then they suggested to take a month break. Now, what kind of are you able? Well, of course, you just started, so you're still trying to get your
No, I
rhythm.
recommend our plan for everybody.
Okay.
We bought a recreational vehicle, an
Oh,
RV.
okay.
It's 25 feet long.
Okay.
And every summer, because we're bivocational, we're school teachers, certified school teachers with military children. We take the summer break as well. And I have to tell you that this is something that we are building the church around, that you take a month, we take 2 months. And that's unheard of. But
Yeah, that's pretty
yeah,
crazy on your part.
it is. But I also have heard the stat that 1,500 pastors walk away from the ministry
And
every month.
isn't that well? We read that in our study together how so many pastors, just mess up on their priorities. The vision become more important than their personal soul care, or also time with their loved ones. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that, it sounds wonderful that I'm taking 2 months off. But in that time, we're not going to be traveling this year. We will be parked along the Pacific Northwest coast, and I'll be in the textbooks. Last summer, I was able to write some sermons as well and do sermon prep and to read some books and things like that will help me with the ministry.
Right.
So it's a chance for me to do my growth time, my growth period, where that's so important for pastors to take that time. I think that our church is young, but I'm not. And I know...
What do you mean you're not?
Well, I am younger than you, but... well, what? No.
You're right.
I'm 53, and so when... that's one of the things that we have. You want to give young pastors a chance to grow. You want to pour your lives into a young pastor so then they can be the future leaders of the church.
Absolutely.
But I'm not going to get riled about doing some things because of the experience of life.
Yeah.
And so when something happens, then I also know I don't have to do it on my own. I can contact you. You haven't asked, but I'll tell you about the story. There was a point where we were meeting in a language school, and I talked to you about moving back because
Right.
the flock wanted to change. We weren't growing. We were staying at a steady dozen people, and I talked to you about the possibility of moving back to another location. And you gave me some ideas to work on, and so we did. We went and we priced some other places to go to, and we looked about what do we want to do for our church. And so we moved back to our house. And our house, you have to understand, is it's a much larger house
Than
than a
your normal-
Japanese. Yeah, it's not a
Right.
normal Japanese.
Yeah.
And it's something that God has just provided. And God knew what was going to happen. And He gave us this Japanese house with 6 parking spaces, which is just unheard of. And
Man.
it's a block from the beach in Okinawa. So it's
Hey, if you
something
have
we did.
anybody that you can send to Okinawa, man, that
Yes.
loves the beach,
Yes.
that needs a place to park, Okinawa, this. In the course of this interview, we want to challenge any one of you to send some young people to Okinawa. Anyway, David, a couple more questions here. What is one thing that you'd like to do differently in your life to enhance your longevity in ministry?
Well, I kind of touched on it, and that was the
Your
health
5%.
part,
Oh,
the
okay.
health part, because you have added strain as a pastor, as a church leader, and so you not only need to take care of your flock, but you need to stay a healthy shepherd. And so we're 6 months into this church plant, and I'm 6 months into this healthy eating plan, and I've lost 30 pounds. Someone from our church matched me on this basically, and she's lost 75 pounds.
Wow.
And so I'm going to continue with the healthy eating plan, but also find a way that I can incorporate listening to my books, because it's my learning style,
Right.
with also using the elliptical and doing those kinds of things as well. So my focus will be on fitness for this next season. And like the food, it was something that we started, but this was the week where we made it 6 months, and we celebrated, and we had some McDonald's French fries, and they didn't taste so good.
Oh.
But there was this 2 month period where, like, when we make it, then I'm going to celebrate. And so we were having this feeling of, this will be it. We're going to get a chance to go celebrate with some McDonald's French fries. But our lifestyle had changed so much that when we had the fries, it didn't feel good.
Wow.
So, yeah, so health will be the focus, so that we're physically fit and spiritually fit.
Right. Now, just to close our time with this interview, this last question is, there are so many young pastors that are coming up, and then, of course, you just mentioned a few minutes ago you're at 53, and you're pacing yourself according to the rhythm that would take you to last in this stage of life in ministry. What advice would you give to a young theologian starting out in ministry, or a young person who that may have a dream of they want to start in ministry, start a church? And what kind of advice can you give young people like that?
I would say, be in the Bible. We do the journal reading, but also look for mentors, and mentors can come from different avenues. You can have a live mentor, someone who could be Samoan, and he can still mentor you. You can also find mentors in the Bible.
Right. So,
so
you
that-
consider that what long distance type mentoring from Bible and
I would definitely look at mentors from the Bible, like I've mentioned some of them, but also look outside of your area. We're here in Japan, but I have mentors in Oregon, I have mentors in Hawaii, I have mentors in Tokyo. And when I found somebody that was really good at certain things, then I would say, hey, do you mind if I send you an email?
Wow.
And then follow up with it so that you can do that. I'll tell you one story where I wanted to be mentored in business, and I needed to know how to do something on some computers. But an old boss was really good at that. I called him up and said, hey, when are you going to be traveling? And he gave me the date, and I booked myself on the same flight.
Wow.
I had to go from Okinawa to Japan for business, but I actually said, when are you going to be on that flight, Ron? And so I got the same flight. He had 2.5 hours with me, and he was able to help me. So that's extreme, but if you want something, go ahead and do that. And
So you will recommend find mentors that help guide you when you have something to talk about. At least you have one of these mentors that can help you.
yeah, because even though I'm planning a church in Okinawa, my mentors don't have to be in Okinawa.
Right.
So I would do that. And also mentors can tell you what books are good to read. I've had mentors that have gifted me books on the computer,
Wow.
They've purchased books and then sent me a link, and I've looked at those. But also others have told me about some of the books that meant a lot to them, and that's helped me. I had one mentor I went to out of Hawaii, and he says, oh yeah, I took the course with the guy that wrote that book. And so he gave me some insight. So
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Hey, so grateful to have Pastor David here. Um, I really agree with him. A word to those who are looking into going into ministry in the platform of church planting or going on mission or be a pastor on a full-time basis. Mentoring is one of the most, I would say for me, as Pastor David has shared, that surround yourself with wise men, godly men, men who see the need in your life and speak, or men you can trust when you come and just dump issues on them and listen and gather wisdom from them. I have such an amazing mentor in ministry with Uncle Dan. Even to this, from the day I became an intern in New Hope Church in Oahu, where Pastor Wayne pastored. I have been with Uncle Dan forever, and he is because of his wisdom and just continuous support and encouragement allowed me to be here in Japan, and we're almost been here with New Hope for about close to 20 years. Dr. Wayne Cordero has been one of those mentors who have a great impact on both of our lives. Dr. Guy Higashi. I remember, as a young intern, and Dr. Guy Higashi I was assigned to be with him, and we took charge of a midweek service. I was helping him and mentor under his leadership in how to structure services, and at the same time how to prepare for to serve people that came to that midweek service that we had. While that is now turned into New Hope Central Church, Mililani, Pastor Guy started that midweek service, and I supported him with my wife. So it's a wonderful thing to be surrounded by great mentors. And I am very, very grateful to be a part of this New Hope movement that allows that leaders speak straight, lovingly, graciously, as well as giving you opportunities to stretch your wings and start to fly. So, Pastor David, thank you for being willing to sit in this interview with me, and I'm very, very grateful that we have an opportunity to serve the Lord together.
Amen.
And thank you so much, and thank you for listening to this interview, and hopefully that we'll hear from, or you'll hear from us again someday, somewhere. All right. With that, we say aloha
Aloha.
and sayonara.
Sayonara.